Today on the Pro-Life Podcast, 2 major rulings coming from the U.S. Supreme Court in the next hours to weeks. We need to talk about this. Let's get started. Happy Thursday, Pro-Life family. Pull up a chair. Welcome to the table. We've got our coffee. Doctor, good to have you in again.
Yep. Happy to be here.
Coffee filled up to the top here.
I just filled it up.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because, the silliness to talk about today. First, friends, if we'll introduce ourselves to the audio listeners, so you have a voice match to the names.
Kim Schwartz, Director of Media and Communication.
Dr. John Seago. I serve as the president for Texas Right to Life.
Brent Klingerman, IT director, and they let me sit here and try and host this thing. So
You want to.
you
fight to be at this chair.
At this point, I have accepted it. It's kind of fun. At the beginning, it was like, you want me to what now?
Yeah.
No, I said over there behind the thing.
Yeah.
I've heard you
so-
introduce yourself as a podcast personality.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm an influencer.
Like, when did that happen? I think that was at the homeschool convention. We're like, hey, you're the podcast. We're like, yes,
There you go.
I am.
The fan club grows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, homeschool event was the only place I've ever been recognized. So
Nice.
it's kind of a niche market. Okay. Supreme Courts, both in Texas and the federal. There's some upcoming things and some things that have happened. Let's start with the Texas Supreme Court recently.
Yeah.
What's the update there?
Definitely. I think so. We've got a lot to talk about today. You know, you said we've got the Supreme Court of Texas came out with a ruling that was pretty important, and I think the abortion industry had a lot of hopes staked on this thing, and then
Yeah.
dreams dead, which is fine.
Rat.
Yes, exactly. And then we've got 2 big cases that you can look forward to this month that are probably going to come from the U.S. Supreme Court. And so we've talked about them before, but we would just want to recap that and, make sure it's on your radar. So you're ready by the time they come out and you've got those people with the angry comments, you know what to say.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what happened with the Supreme Court of Texas and why did abortionists really have hope in this case?
Yeah. So Friday, we did hear from the Supreme Court of Texas, and they ruled, all of the justices ruled unanimously on this, that they rejected a case that was challenging the constitutionality of our pro-life laws here in Texas. And this case has actually been pending for a really long time. It was filed in February of 23. So more than a year ago, this has been going on. And it focused on women who were plaintiffs who said that they, for medical reasons, generally speaking, they wanted abortions and they were not able to access them. And one of the difficulties of this case was, in the more than a dozen women in the case, they covered a lot of different situations. Mm-hmm. So you had some women who had twins and the doctor said, in very vague terms, to give one twin a better chance of surviving, you should abort the second twin. You had couples that they took some testing and their children were diagnosed with different conditions, various degrees of severity. And then you have women who were experiencing medical emergencies, like having their water break extremely early in pregnancy, and the doctors, what we would say is malpractice. I mean, they committed medical malpractice. They did not handle those situations correctly. They didn't know the law. Their lawyers gave them bad advice, and they really put these women in jeopardy. And instead of going after those doctors who mishandled these, they decided all together to file a lawsuit against Texas law and say, this law is unconstitutional because it did not, in all of these circumstances, allow us to have an abortion here in the state.
Jeez. And I think one of the most difficult but also deceptive things that the abortion group did with this case was lumping in all of those situations together and pretending that they're the same thing. So we can look at the situations where the woman's life is in danger and say okay, yes, the doctor should have acted, do an early induction, deliver the baby, and then treat the baby too as much as they can, but treat the woman for the infection or whatever it is that's happening. And then in the same breath, they'll just say okay, well, if that is a medically necessary abortion, we'll say that these other abortions they're medical necessary?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for it. And they just pretend like these are all the same thing, and they're not.
Yeah. No, and that's the difficulty. And that's why this honestly was a complex case. And even though we have some great justices in the Supreme Court of Texas, we still were a little unsure of how this would end up. There was a lot of different things they could do. They could divide up the case. They could rule, on some of the plaintiffs and then leave standing for some of the other plaintiffs. So there was a lot of different options here. And I think that's why, even though we have a good court, we were really waiting to see the exact details of the case, or the ruling rather.
Yeah.
And so, but essentially what they said was, no, Texas law is sufficient to achieve protecting these women in these circumstances where their life is being endangered. And the law is very clear that it does not have exceptions for killing one twin to save the other. It does not allow for killing a child because they may die later. And so it was very clear in clarifying what the law is and what it is not. And one thing I was really thankful to see is that they addressed one of the biggest myths and misconceptions that we've seen in this space, where they say a woman has to be on death's door for the doctor to be able to treat her, to get involved. And so
surely there's got to be some medical guidelines before we get to that stage, right?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, this is a myth. I think we've talked about it like a dozen times on this podcast.
A lot.
Because it's a huge problem, because the goal of our pro-life laws is to protect life.
Yes.
It's to protect these mothers. It's to protect these children. And so for there to be an accusation that you have to allow a woman to almost be dead before our law can protect them and address their situation, it's concerning. It should be a red flag for all of us as pro-lifers. The reality is that's not the case. We say if a doctor is treating a woman and she has a life-threatening condition, something that could be fatal if not addressed, or if there's a condition that threatens a major bodily function, like her reproductive capacity, then doctors can get involved immediately. So we have a very clear law that addresses these. However, there's been this myth that, well, it's only if the death is imminent, if it's about to happen. And the law doesn't say that. And so the court clarified it could be a foreseen condition. And with the water breaking example that we gave, PPROM is kind of the term that they use. Yeah. In that case, doctors know where this is going. They don't have to wait until there is an infection that is really threatening her life. They can say, we've seen this before, we know in 90 or 80 to 90% of these cases, there's going to be an infection, and they can get involved and help the woman and try to give the child the best chance they have. And the court reaffirmed that. And so we're very thankful the court said, no, these are not, legitimate challenges to Texas pro-life laws.
Dang. I want to clarify one more question, or ask one more question here too. So, our laws do say, a doctor can do an abortion in the case of a medical emergency. Whenever people hear that, they think like, okay, the doctor is going to stop the child's heart, kill the child. And, there's this distinction between like the legal and the like medical and practical side of it. Yeah. Can you go into, what actually happens in those situations? Yeah,
so this is one of those things. It's just if you were just getting your information from Twitter or from Facebook or something, you would think that it is like taught in medical schools. If a pregnant woman comes into the ER after a car accident, after her water breaking early, for whatever emergency, the first thing you do is you call up Planned Parenthood and they get in there and they perform an abortion. Abortion doesn't.
If you listen to Twitter, yes.
But abortion does not heal any of these circumstances, because the way we define abortion in law and morally is to go and to cause the death of that child. And if a mom is really in duress, if she really has a medical emergency, taking the life of her child doesn't stabilize her. It doesn't affect her. She's still going to have the complications. She's still going to have the risks. And so that is one thing, like Dr. Scott and our other pro-life OB-GYNs who we talk to about this, they say, in our practice, we don't even like to call it abortion. And we like the court. We appreciate what they did. They used a really terrible phrase. And I'm like cautious to even say it. But they said life-saving abortions, okay?
That's not a thing.
No, that's not a thing.
Opposites.
It's intervention in a medical emergency. And so, but that's kind of leading into the myth. And I don't like that they just adopted that language from the Center for Reproductive Rights. But that's the idea, is that you go in, you kill the child, and then that magically saves the woman. No. Intervention, right? Going in and having an early induction, right? Getting the child, removing the child, and then stabilizing the woman and doing what you can for the child. Right. That is typically how our OB-GYNs handle this situation. And so you're absolutely right, is we don't want to lead into this myth out there that abortion is healthcare, that it heals anything. It does not. It does not actually return any patient to health, even the mother. Obviously not the child. It is a cause of death. And so, we do have to continue to clarify that point. But what we do want to do is we want to give doctors the space to treat women in these terrible circumstances. Because us, the pro-life side, out of anyone in the debate, we sympathize for these women. They cherish these children. They want to be mothers. They want to, they want to provide for those children, and they are facing some kind of complication, some kind of dangerous situation. So we absolutely want to make sure our law is clear on this, and that's why we're really thankful that the Supreme Court said, yes, we have definitions. It is not our job to go in and rewrite the law, which this pro-abortion group out of New York did. That's another point, is that this is not as if these women filed this lawsuit on their own. Right?
Yeah.
This was a campaign from a pro-abortion group in New York to come gather all these plaintiffs, have a big press conference, because it was during session when they filed this, to try to get momentum, political momentum. They're using it in campaigns. They're using it in D.C. So it is not, at least from the center standpoint, the pro-abortion group, it's not, fully out of, the charity, the generosity and charity of their hearts that they're bringing this case. Yeah. They have an agenda, and the Supreme Court just shut it down.
Praise the Lord. Now, I wish that was the end of the chapter, and it's like, all right, everyone understands now that, doctors are able to treat women in life-threatening emergencies. Au contraire, the Biden administration is like, let me throw a dog in this fight. Yeah. And it's not a good dog.
Well, yeah, that's the, this is EMTALA you're referring to, yes. I believe. We've joked because it sounds more like a medication. Like, ask your doctor if EMTALA is right for you. Well, in this circumstance, I'm going to have to say probably not. Right. I don't think this version of EMTALA is good for anybody. Mm-mm. So this version of it, this is the Biden administration trying to shoehorn abortion into ERs. Yeah. Correct? Okay. Yeah. Now they're doing it because EMTALA originally used that an ER needs to stabilize the patient when they come in. Mm-hmm. It's kind of what we think of ERs being for. Mm-hmm. What the heck does abortion have to do with that?
That's a great question. And that's a question we should ask Biden and or his team. Because EMTALA is this 1980s law that was passed to protect pregnant women, was passed to protect women who were in active labor. That's part of the title there. Yeah. And so if a woman shows up to an ER in active labor, for the safety of her and her child, the hospital can't say, hold up, let me see your insurance card, let me see, your cash before we treat you. Mm-hmm. EMTALA was to address that, to make sure you don't check on their insurance, you don't check on their ability to pay if there's an emergent situation that puts their life in jeopardy, or if they're in active labor. Like, that's explicitly the point of this. And now the Biden administration, after Dobbs, used this to say, an emergent situation may require you to actually do an abortion. And so if you want to get Medicaid funding, you need to make sure that women are stabilized through abortion if they show up in the ER. And it is just, it's just completely backwards. It's like, it's not, I don't even use like the screwdriver hammer analogy. Like it's not even like the right tool. I mean, it's like using a ham sandwich instead of a screwdriver.
Really it's like I have a gunshot wound in my leg. Have you considered abortion?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. But it has created a lot of confusion. Because whenever we say we oppose this litigation, or when our attorney general is in court saying, no, that's wrong for the Biden administration to use EMTALA, the way the media covers it is Texas doesn't want to care for women in emergencies. But as we just talked about, we already have that covered. Thanks, Biden. We didn't need your assistance here for making sure we're caring for them. We have clear laws. We're working on medical board rules to educate doctors even more. And they really just busted in trying to use this law in a backwards kind of way to force abortion on our emergency rooms. And it ultimately, it has caused more confusion. So if that was the goal, success.
I mean, this administration's philosophy, if it ain't broke, break it.
Good point.
It's kind of astounding. I mean, the federal law itself says you can't use it like this. It says that this law cannot supersede any state laws on the topic.
Impressive.
And so if states already had a protection of women in active labor that you can't check theirs, like you don't need EMTALA. Like the federal government's saying, hey, if a state doesn't have a law in this space, then use EMTALA. So, but if they do, we back off, we let the state handle it. We clearly have a law in this space dealing with medical emergencies, and yet the Biden administration still said to us and Idaho, I think it's Idaho, is the other case, it said, no, EMTALA comes first before your state law.
That's a disaster.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court is going to rule on that.
Okay.
And so we'll see this term, before the summer, or before the end of June.
Yeah.
We'll get that ruling on EMTALA.
So in the next days to couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you feeling about the EMTALA case? Do you think we're going to get a pro-life ruling? What do you think the justices are going to do?
Yeah, my guess would be we do have a favorable ruling where they look at specifically what Idaho had, because Idaho does have medical emergency exemption. And then the states, in some of the briefings and stuff, they've talked about this being the norm, for other states as well. And so I do think the court says, no, that's the wrong tool to accomplish this goal. And the goal is already being accomplished through state, which is very consistent with Dobbs, because Dobbs was saying, let's defer to the people and their elected representatives to establish this. And, Idaho and Texas have elected representatives that have put in state laws.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. It feels like that they're going to take the obvious, like this law already says federal government doesn't supersede. So it seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Clear to everybody but Biden. We'll see.
There's more jokes there, but I'm going to leave them on the table. Friends, we need to take a quick break. Oh, my brain just turned off mid-sentence.
Oh, no. This is how Joe Biden feels every day.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, let's take a quick break, and then we still have to talk about the FDA in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one.
After these important announcements.
Great news. Texas Right to Life is celebrating our 50th birthday this year. This is half a century of victories that the Lord has given us. But God is not done yet. The battle for life is only increasing as the abortion industry is going underground to promote death and sell abortion. Join us in supporting Texas Right to Life's 50th birthday campaign and chip in with a gift today. Thank you for 50 years of saving lives. And friend, the best is yet to come.
Get your tickets today for the Convention for Life. This is like my favorite convention all year. June 22nd in Houston at Grace Church in the Woodlands. We're going to level up that pro-life knowledge, and you are going to be a pro-life expert. We're going to hear from an amazing lineup of speakers to help you defend your beliefs, including author Danielle D'Souza Gill. If that D'Souza name sounds a little familiar, yeah, Dinesh's daughter. It's going to be an amazing time. We are going to celebrate the anniversary of the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and we're going to look forward and talk about some of the issues facing our movement. Get your tickets at conventionforlife.com. All the details and links below, conventionforlife.com. We'll see you in June. Welcome back, friends. If you want to see these guys at the Convention for Life, coming up in just a couple weeks, you can get your tickets, links below, coupon information below. Take advantage of that sale. It's awesome. Okay. More Biden nonsense. We want to talk about the FDA ruling that will happen from the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, in the next days to weeks again. And this one, a little less optimistic worldview here, I think.
You want to lay it out for us?
Yeah. So, was it a year ago that we had the FDA case?
At least, I think.
I mean, man, time flies.
The wheels of justice turn, but not fast.
Got it. All right. So, yeah, it's been over a year. Some pro-life groups, pro-life doctors sued the FDA saying that the FDA ignored its own standards when approving the abortion pill mifepristone. And so then they even ignored their own rules later in loosening regulations on it. So they're like, hey, y'all are creating a mess here. It really violates our rights as doctors. So court, can y'all, put the FDA in its place here? And the gold standard that we were going for in this case as the pro-life side was to get mifepristone taken off the market for the use of abortion.
Yeah.
It's gone up and down the court all around. And that question is like off the table now. So we're not even, it's not a possibility anymore. Is it a possibility? Or
it would be surprising because the lower court already got rid of that piece.
Yeah. Okay. So lower court got rid of that question.
Yeah.
But the question that still stays on the table is, what about these recent regulations that the FDA had approved? So they allowed the abortion pill to be used as late as 10 weeks. Before that, it was at 7 weeks because that is just safer for the mother. And then in 2021, the Biden administration said, hey, you don't even need to visit a doctor to take the abortion pill. You can just get it, in the mail, telemedicine, all that. And
the reporting.
Oh, wait.
Reporting how they report injuries and deaths. That requirement was loosened in the changes. And that was a big piece of, they're saying, but look at the data, there's no injuries. And it's like, well, you said they don't have to report injuries.
That'll do it.
So, yeah, of course, you've got data that's a big zero.
Wow.
So that was, but there's been a lot of other details of the changes. And that just shows you these changes were not made for the safety of the drug and the protection of patients. These changes were made for a political agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the question on the table before the Supreme Court is like, did the FDA violate its own protocol here? And, if the Supreme Court rules in our favor, then they'll undo those regulations basically and put it back to how it was before 2016, I believe, was when they started rolling that back. How are we feeling about this case? What's been going on with it?
Yeah, so, it's disappointing so far, just to see that piece taken off the table, to consider how these abortion drugs got to market in the first place.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of really great research and documentation in the briefing that shows, this was the Clinton administration pushing this to market, and the other side says, well, it took them 3 times as long to get this to market as it does typical drugs. That's not a good thing.
Usually no.
That means that they were spinning their wheels trying to get the justifications to meet all the standards to get it to market. For example, for a drug to be approved, it has to be treating an illness or a disease or an injury, right? And pregnancy is neither of those things. The FDA has never said pregnancy is an illness. It's a disease. It's an injury to be healed, to be addressed.
I've heard some activists try and explain it
like
it's some sort of
since
disease.
Then, yes. But this is like late 90s.
That's true. That's true. This is an old case.
And so they were trying to, so the FDA ended up having to say that for this to even get, out the gate, they have to say pregnancy in some circumstances is a disease itself, which is just, crazy. So I'm disappointed that we're not really taking a look at this whole political development of how the FDA got here.
Yeah. And the reason why they took that question off was that they said they didn't have standing. It's been too long, right?
Yeah, it's been too long, and there is some limitations. Well, they were arguing there were certain time limitations to when this would be a ripe challenge to that, and it didn't come. The other challenge with this case was the court seemed very suspicious. Even conservative justices seemed really suspicious of this pro-life group and these pro-life doctors having standing to bring a challenge to these. And the other side was arguing, if you do this, you were kind of opening up the floodgates for competitors to bring challenges to, certain drugs. If they're in the same market and they want to take out their competitor, they go and challenge the approval process of their competitor's drug they got to market. So there was a lot there, and the oral arguments did not go well. They did not seem to be in our favor. Now, it's hard to tell. Like, sometimes all the questions sound very negative because the justices are just doing their job. They're being,
That's
impartial.
good.
They're trying to really, fill out the other side's argument. Right. This seemed not like that. This did seem a little bit more challenging for our side to clear those benchmarks of standing. But we'll see. By the end of the month, we will see what the Supreme Court does with this. A lot of attention has been paid, and this is a good case. I'm glad that this was brought. We have a lot of friends that were working on this case. However, even if we got everything we wanted in this case, it's not a silver bullet.
Right.
It's not, and I think we just have to be careful from our side, hoping that the Supreme Court will do all the heavy lifting for our movement. Dobbs was a huge win, but we have to realize Dobbs didn't stop abortion, right? It didn't say children have a constitutional right to life, and therefore abortion can't be allowed in our country. That's justice, right? That's actually our position. That even the highest court in the land can't take someone's right to life away. Dobbs didn't give us that. We still have work to do. And just in this case, the Supreme Court is not going to solve all of our concerns and address what the enemy is doing, even in a red state.
I want to ask you two more questions. So one, whenever you said this group, like this lawsuit doesn't look like it's super gonna go in our favor. We don't know, but probably, yeah. Because the doctors didn't have standing, so they didn't show we were harmed by this. What would it take to, if we ran another lawsuit like this, who would have standing? Who would be able to bring a case like this?
Yeah, no, I think those were some of the questions that were raised immediately after all of the kind of suspicion from the justices. It seemed like a doctor who regularly prescribes the drug in question, or treats patients who were harmed by the drug. And those doctors were there. I mean, you did have some pro-life OB-GYNs who had treated women in the ER after they took abortion pills. However, they were it was not well established, I guess. It was there were still a lot of questions. It does seem like a pretty difficult barrier to overcome. And there are a lot of great attorneys working on this. So I'm sure there are other angles to take it. But it was clear they felt like if a doctor was prescribing the drugs, which would mean somebody who's okay with abortion, who is regularly, performing an abortion, even though it's a chemical, but still, administering those abortion pills, that they would have standing. So we just need a pro-abortion doctor to come to their senses about the harm that they're doing on women and the concerns that the FDA has, that would be the standing. And it's a little ridiculous.
Not impossible, but feels unlikely.
Yeah. I mean, we have abortionists who have converted. We have abortionists who realized the truth about what they were doing. And so maybe it would take somebody like that. Okay. But it also, there's always been this uneasy trend in these court cases where Planned Parenthood is allowed to represent women, and pro-life doctors have not had that same preference, right? They have not had that same ability. So Planned Parenthood goes to court and says, on behalf of all these women who will want abortions in the next 10 years, we're going to challenge Texas's pro-life laws. And courts especially at the district level, are like, yep, good enough for me. You don't even have the name of those patients, their future patients. Absolutely, you have standing. For us conservatives, we are less comfortable with that kind of situation, and it has just has not been established yet. So it's a difficult case to have, but I think for me, when I look at the future of what we're doing here in Texas and the fights that we have ahead of us, it's not the FDA.
Yeah.
It's not the doctors who are following the FDA. It's the doctors who are ignoring the FDA. Mm-hmm. It's the doctors who are mailing abortion pills that aren't even made in the United States, that are made out of a pharmacy in India and mailing them directly to our citizens, causing the death of children here in Texas. Tens of thousands of these orders that are going through. That pharmacy in another country doesn't care what the FDA says. Sure. So even if the FDA, we win the presidency, they clean up house at the FDA, and now they're going to really make sure, we're shutting down on these abortion pills in the United States. That would help. That would be great. That would affect California, New York. It would affect these states, but you would still have the foreign websites. You would still have the foreign doctors mailing abortion pills into red states. Right. And so to me, that's kind of like, for us at Texas Rights Life, that's a big target right now, is what can we do as a state? What can we do with our attorney general, our district attorneys to fight that foreign trend? Because I call it foreign, it's based, in another country, but then it comes to our backyard. Mm-hmm. So that to me is like a really high priority, and no matter what happens in this FDA case.
Yeah, so that was kind of, did you have
a question? Between my Google alerts and the things you and the legislative team send me, I feel like there's another website every couple of weeks that's like, hey, can you research who these guys are, where they're at, where is this located in the world? Like, what are their tools? How are they doing this? And I'm trying to reverse engineer it and figure out, how do we fight this?
So we have a list, and back in last fall, there were 24 sites.
Right.
Our latest count is 36 sites.
Yep.
And these are sites you actually go to, put in your credit card information, and you can have abortion pills in your mailbox by the weekend. I mean, it is just, that's the new trend. And yes, every time we get a new address, we bug you about it. We bug our IT guys saying, hey, can you do some internet sleuthing? I don't know how you do it, but apparently you have some spells and some incantations or something that you say to find out information about these illegal websites.
Well, almost 30 years ago when I was fixing computers, nobody told me I'd need to know international commerce law to try and fight this nonsense, that was ever going to be a useful skill in my professional adult life. But here we are.
Yeah, and that's what our legislative team is doing right now, preparing for January, is they're looking at that of how do we, one, get all the information on these websites, but two, how do we practically stop them? Yeah. And, this is kind of a new territory for the pro-life movement, but it's not new territory for Christians. There are Christians around our country and around the world that are fighting evil and human trafficking, the business of human trafficking, in fighting internet child pornography, that is fighting the opioid crisis, and they are using tools to stop evil things from happening over the internet. And so thankfully, there are out there. It's just the pro-life movement and our team is new to, okay, let's go use those tools that they're doing to stop human trafficking, to save these victims in these other acts of injustice.
Yes.
And how do we use those to stop abortion pills from being mailed directly to college students, here in Texas, in their dorm rooms?
Well, it's difficult when most of your internet regulations were written in a time when access was through dial-up. And nobody could fathom that anyone would ever realistically order anything across a state border, let alone an international border, over the internet, especially when 90% of the world didn't really have the internet. And now we're ordering things out of India and get it in a couple of days. The laws in the 90s could not have foreseen that, and now here we are trying to fix these problems, and it's such a mess.
Yeah, and I think, It is a mess and it's very difficult, but I kind of encourage our legislators, because I get this question all the time. It's like, John, you're talking about the websites. How can we possibly stop that? And I tell them, I don't have a silver bullet. Okay, I don't have, this is it. Just like, back in the early 90s, Texas Right to Life didn't know how we were going to overturn Roe v. Wade. We knew we had to start doing, we had to start working, swinging. And so we started parental involvement laws. We started informed consent laws. We started, a 20-week ban, dismemberment abortion ban. We start swinging and stopping evil as much as we could. And for me right now in this moment, that's where we are. Is, okay, yes, we have this big scary goal, stopping the illegal websites. I can't tell you I know how we're going to get there, but I do know we have to have leaders, we have to have supporters and donors who are going to help us start swinging. And that's why we can't pass up another legislative session. We can't pass up another season without filing the right litigation. Like, we have to start right now so that in the future we can, again, have a big Dobbs moment where we have great success and can stop evil from taking the lives of children here in Texas.
Let's go. Let's start swinging.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of work to be done. I didn't think I would be involved in some of the legislative things like that.
Yeah.
Hey, here we are. I'll help how I can. So, friends, if you want to help how you can, links below. We appreciate your support. Those legislative efforts, it's a lot of work. And unfortunately, it does require that funding thing. So if you would like to help support the efforts to stop these illegal websites, fix the laws, and save lives, links below. We appreciate your support. I think that's all we have for this week, friends. So thank you so much. Like, subscribe, share. Hopefully we'll see you at the convention in a couple of weeks. Share with your friends. We love you guys. Thanks for watching. See you in 2 weeks.